So in this video, welcome back guys. Thank you so much for like, comment, share, and subscribe. It does help the channel. It does help us, okay? Continue contributing and helping Operation Olive Branch if you can. If you're not able to donate, make sure that you share. You continue helping those people in Rafah and Gaza, okay? Continue free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, all right? Please, 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 it does help when you like the video. It helps the algorithm. It helps us beat the censorship and suppression that right now is being going on with everybody who is pro-Palestinian. And I explained to you in part one why, right? They are scared that their money hungry greed is gonna be blocked, stopped, and they are all going to rot in prison. And I told you in part one that that's going to happen. It was literally a vision, completely clear as day. And usually I don't get visions like that on during daylight, but it was like he was just answering my prayer like right away. Which also is a clear indication also that a lot of y'all are dealing with a lot, right? A lot of paranormal activity, supernatural situations that you just like don't understand. A lot of you are dealing with a lot of injustices and oppression, especially if you are from pro-Palestine. That's what it means when you are standing with God. That's what it means when you start praying, when you start loving God. You are back into.
Hey cool kids, emergency video for anybody protesting on their college campus. This is me, 10 years ago, protesting on my college campus in grad school after Michael Brown was killed. Number one, shut up. It's a given not to talk to police, but don't talk to administrators either. They want to meet with us. I'm sure they do. They had their chance to meet with you and they sick the police on you instead. Never forget that. 2, discuss nothing important in chats. Discord, any kind of group message like that, don't. Check-ins and general information only there. Planning should always take place in person with no phones present. Speaking of, number 3, write everything down. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. This is a good job for somebody to do that cannot be out on the front lines for whatever reason. 4, find an adulty or adult and tell them where you are, what you're doing, and when you get home. There are some things in movement spaces that require a level of secrecy. Your safety is not one of them. Next, for now, I would suggest that you keep protests campus specific because different states, different counties, different institutions have different rules about when you are and are not considered a student. And being a student, at least for now, provides you with a bubble of semi-protection. If you are an amateur protester or demonstrator, you are inside before dark. Do you hear me? You are inside before dark. Incorporate art, dance, and joy into your activism as much as you can. Rest and hydrate, because I have been saying this for years. You get no extra points for running yourself into the ground. One more time, you get no extra points for running yourself into the ground. If I was still teaching on a college campus right now, I would cancel whatever lesson I was doing and have my students read these 3 things, and you should read them too. There are 3 kinds of protests that America has and always will use its full weight to try and stop. Labor protests, protests for Black rights, and anti-war protests. And you may not realize it, but protesting the genocide in Palestine is actually all 3 of those combined. So please have a healthy respect of just how far the system will go to silence you. All power. I'm proud of you. Keep going.
Line. You're back into the right side of history, the right side of God, okay? No spiritual being in this planet who loves God, who stand up for injustice and oppression for the ever, is easy for them. I love that Jenin talks about this and it makes it so clear, and I'm so upset that her account was removed. But one thing that now she created a backup account, okay? So all the videos, guys, that I have posted here from her, unfortunately, you will not find it in the other account, but you'll find it in her new account. I think she might be reposting it, but the good thing is that we have saved her videos and we have saved everything, okay? So if she's not able to, but also she's amazing at saving her work because she knows what's up. She knows Meta, she knows Instagram, she knows YouTube, she knows, okay? So that's beautiful. So learn from her as well. Save all your shit. Save all evidence, save the truth, save everything, okay? This video was actually really good that I think is going to help you guys with the whole like 2-side whatever. There's no 2-side. Let's just keep that clear. All right.
So this video is for everybody who still thinks that there are 2 sides, who still thinks that this is a unique crisis, who still thinks that it's complicated or they don't know enough about the history of Palestine in order to appropriately choose a side. And I'm making this video because those people, I'm realizing those people, are not learning the history the way that we are meant to in order to prevent things from happening again. I'm realizing that there is a common misconception amongst those who are learning about genocides of our past. And I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if it's intentionally taught this way. Could be, probably is. But the misconception that people come out of these courses or this research thinking is that speaking out against genocides of our past was an easy thing to do. That speaking out against fascism and white supremacy and oppressive regimes was somehow easier and more recognizable to be able to do this in the past than it is today. People think that it was easy for people to speak out against Nazi Germany. And again, it's because we are downplaying or ignoring or purposefully removing the role that media and propaganda has in genocide. There was censorship and propaganda and media bias, and it was illegal to boycott Nazi Germany during the Holocaust. And while I, as a Palestinian, would love to believe that we are unique, it's very textbook genocide across the board. This is from the Holocaust Encyclopedia, and it talks about how Nazis used propaganda and censorship to garner support for Nazi Germany. So when I started college, I was a psych major. I was pretty sure that that was the field I wanted to go into. And then my sophomore year of college, I studied abroad, and I took a social psychology course that absolutely changed my life. And it was because of this specific lesson about a man named Edward Bernays, who is considered the father of public relations, that I decided to switch my major from general psych to journalism with a minor in social psychology, because I understood in that moment that those two education degrees go hand in hand. And it was also this lesson that resulted in me becoming completely consumed, mainly by fear, of the newly acquired knowledge I had of how unbelievably simple it was to control the human mind. And it led me to a nearly 12-year career in the public relations field. And just a note to further prove my point that media and propaganda and psychology go hand in hand. Edward Bernays used to work very closely and learned a lot from his uncle, who was Sigmund Freud. And so when you can recognize that public relations and propaganda is a manipulation tactic of the human brain, it becomes a lot easier to spot these things. And a tactic that Bernays was likely most famous for is something that he called engineering consent. And you can read his brief description about it right here, which is to control and regiment the masses according to our will, our being those in power, without their knowing about it. We are there. And there's also an additional part that's equally as important that I forgot to highlight, but it's to do so, it was necessary to appeal not to the rational part of the mind, but the unconscious. So if you're going back to public relations in the world of consumerism and capitalism, they get you to purchase products that you don't need by convincing you that you need them, that your life will be better with them. That is what they mean by appealing to the unconscious mind. This article goes on to say that Bernays couldn't have imagined that his writings on public relations would become a tool of who? The Third Reich. This man literally wrote the propaganda playbook for Nazi Germany. And because we're now all in agreement that all fascism is the same, this is now exactly the same playbook that Israel and the US are using to convince you that the genocide happening in Gaza is not only okay, but too complicated for you to want to dive into and learn about. Back to the Holocaust Encyclopedia. This is a list of bullet points that were propaganda tools that were used to spread Nazi ideas. One of the ones I highlighted was spreading negative images and ideas about Jews in magazines, films, cartoons, and other media. There are so many things that I could show you about how the media has vilified Palestinians in order to muster up support for our slaughter. However, the most recent one that comes to mind is a political cartoon that was recently taken down because enough people called them out on it being so racist and dangerous. But this was published in the Washington Post, and it is a supposed Palestinian man with children and women strapped to his body saying, "How dare Israel attack civilians," which plays into the false narrative of Palestinians using civilians as human shields, making it so that Israel has no choice but to kill these civilians, when it is actually well known and well documented that the Israeli military uses Palestinians as human shields. Here's a report from an Israeli humanitarian organization that has been tracking Israeli war crimes against Palestinians for years. And it's a report on how the military practice an official policy of using Palestinians as human shields. An official policy. They got pics and everything. Back to the Holocaust Encyclopedia, and moving on to the second thing I highlighted in this little toolkit, organizing large and celebratory Nazi party rallies. Where did we just see that? That's right, it was here, when a pro-Israel organization was outed for offering microgrants of up to $250 that paid college students to attend the pro-genocide rally that we saw in DC last week. I know this is a lot of information to be digesting at one time, but I promise if you stick with me to the end of this video, you will feel more confident to start using your voice to speak out against genocide. Here's probably the most important comparison. Starting in 1934, it was illegal to criticize the Nazi government. That meant everything from speaking out against Nazi Germany and Hitler to boycotting anything that had to do with Nazi Germany or Hitler. And something in me tells me that Americans have no idea that it is illegal in 36 of the 50 states in the United States to boycott the state of Israel. You can literally boycott America in America, but Israel is off the table. And the last thing that I will compare is the complete failure of the American media during the Holocaust and the rise of Nazi Germany and what it's doing today in the case of Palestine. And the reason why I bring this up is because people really trust legacy media. And legacy media being like the New York Times, BBC, CNN, Fox, those are all considered legacy outlets and others like them. They think they became these legacy outlets by having this reputation of always reporting the truth, when that couldn't be further from reality. And it's shown time and time again that American legacy media has repeatedly failed in times of humanitarian crises. There are a number of pieces talking about the silence of the American media or the sheer manipulation tactics that were published during the time of the Holocaust and World War II. Like entire thought pieces in their own outlets about the failures of the American press during Nazi Germany. Entire articles calling out the Times for specifically downplaying what was happening to Jews in Nazi Germany. Why? Because the owners and editors of the newspaper were so concerned that the anti-Semitism that was running rampant and still today runs rampant throughout the United States would undermine public support for the war, and that too many Americans wouldn't want their sons going overseas to fight to save the Jews. That's a direct quote. And case studies on the sheer manipulation tactics that the American press was able to use on the general American public during the Holocaust and World War II to stop people from speaking out against what was happening. And in the case of Palestine, articles like this are starting to come out, where journalists are leaving their jobs or calling out their outlets for the media bias in reporting on what is happening to Palestinians. And they are talking about the direct correlation between that media bias and the support that Israel is getting for its genocide on Gaza. And so I think my long-winded point to all of this is that if you are still one of those people who thinks that you don't know enough about this to speak out, or that it's complicated and this is a unique subject and it's not like other genocides in the past, and you think that it was easy to speak out against human atrocities back in the day, that's a lie. And so if you are someone who is comfortable in their silence or in their neutrality in times of genocide, that's not because you don't know what's going on. That's because this is who you are as a person. It does not, and it will never require higher education in geopolitics or in a specific region of the world to understand that what you are watching is not okay. And so you can do your best to convince yourself all you want that during times of the Holocaust and World War II or times of the Vietnam War or the Civil Rights Movement that you would have been a person to speak out, but you're not doing that now. I can promise you that what you are doing now is what you would have done then. And one more time to close out this video. What you are doing now for Palestine is exactly what you would have done back then.
Okay, this is another one that I'm gonna add here because for a lot of us is going, oh, beautiful bird. Is okay, two birds. It's it comes right in hand, and also it can help you guys have more confidence when you stand up for what's right, when you don't, because it is happening right now. Like I said in part one, there's a lot of gaslighting, there's a lot of hate or energy like that. But the thing is, remember, they're gaslighting you because you are exposing the truth. Like, a lot of them is projecting what it's already like. Why are you killing babies? Why are you genociding? Right? For what? For money, so that you can stay comfortable in your filth, right? And you guys are advocating for them to stop, right? So that's what they're upset and calling you hateful and anti whatever, because we can't even say it now, which is so ridiculous. But you see how far these people have gone. And I love that Jenna talked about that. And I hope that was clear for you guys, because it was clear to me. And I know it's gonna give some reassurance for you guys, okay? But this one, it's gonna help a little bit deeper too.
He goes, well, you know what the problem is, Sasha? Social media is making people more extreme on both sides. And I was like, so do you think I'm an extremist? And he's like, yeah. An extremist about what? That everyone should be free? An extremist that genocide is wrong? Like, what are you even saying, bro? And then he was like, I mean, yes, but like, rightly so. Rightly so? So which one is it? These liberal centrists, they don't even know what they're saying. This gaslighting of both sides, extremists, blah, blah, blah. The university, they kicked all of the press out. People were forced to document and to share the truth about what was happening on the ground with their cell phones. It's not about people becoming more extreme on both sides because they only see their social media feed. This is about us finally seeing the truth about what is happening, because we, the people, are reporting it and not the propaganda machine. That these centrist, liberal, whatevers, anything that challenges the status quo scares the shit out of them. But listen, the status quo is genocide, ecocide, and the systemic oppression of Black and brown people. We should fight it.
I ever showed up to a counter protest and the person holding the microphone giving a speech on the other side was none other than Dr. Angela Davis, I would pack it up so quick. I would summon a rift from the molten core of the earth to come up and swallow me whole. You would not hear from me for at least 90 business days. That shit is embarrassing. You are failing an open notes test. You don't have to wonder what would I have done during the civil rights movement, because one of the most prominent leaders of that time period is still alive, standing shoulder to shoulder with Palestine. And you're yapping your mouth at a counter protest while Angela Davis herself is giving a speech in solidarity with the student in Kent. You don't have to wonder, what would you do? What side of this should I fall on? It's Angela Davis. Sheesh. If any activist is going to understand how education is so threatening to systems of power, it would be the woman whose manuscripts for her PhD were seized by the FBI, which is why she never got to receive the degree that she worked for.
All right, that part. That's why I'm like, okay, you were able to finish your studies, you were able to do that, and I've been talking about this for the past 7 to 8 years. YouTube, all the channels have been suppressing this type of content when I talk about climate change, which is something that I have, environmental science, I have a degree on, but I refuse to work in any government organization, corporation, because I realized right in my doing the stage that I was doing, when I was working for a company, that they were actually made me sign a non-disclosure agreement so that I don't talk about what I realized, because when I was doing environmental assessment of this company, I realized that there was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of things that they weren't exposed into the public, and also that they were very, very consciously aware that they were doing. And yes, this was in my city, so the fact that they made me sign that after I did the environmental assessment, and I said, you know what, if this is going to be what I'm going to work every time, where I have to give up my integrity, I have to be dishonest, and then I have to literally go to sleep knowing that there's people drinking poisoned water and lead and all that stuff, and I'm supposed to be quiet about it, because, and also they were offering like extension amount of money too. And let me tell you, during that time, I was literally pregnant with my second child, and I was going through stuff, and literally in the break of like, just stuff going down, and realizing that like, wow, I studied 4 years environmental science, and this crap is like, I mean, it made me realize, it woke me up to the fact that I was studying, like, the study of that is basically to uphold the status quo, is to keep the imperialists and billionaires, these oil companies and gas, to continue what they're doing, right? Detrimental to the earth, corrupting, continued fossil fuels, even though it's not good for the environment or anybody. And then on top of it, I was like, wait, but I'm betraying also my own lineage because I am indigenous. So it's like, it just can't. Okay. So that's why when I graduated, I said, no, I'm not doing this. Also, I was dealing with also the discrimination. Any job that I would apply here in Quebec, they were like, you don't speak the Quebec French. But I understood, and I spoke the way that I could speak French. And there was some type of discrimination of that too. So a lot of us were dealing with racial discrimination of the language as well here. And they make it okay and normalized because, Quebec is French, so too bad. No, you're racist. It's just simple as that. Okay. And then also they have bills here. You see it in everywhere, make it okay, colonials, how they do oppressors, right? So we just have to accept it, right? But at the end of the day, we don't. This is Canada, and we speak multiple languages, and English is one of the main languages, I find. But French is okay, whatever. Again, we just have to uphold oppression and oppressive systems, right? Which we don't, but because it's law now, it's in the word, right? So, long story short, that was it. I decided to make my own business, to build my own community. So I do have writerscape.com came out of that, and Your Story Matter podcast is that. This is where I started also during that time started the Black Lives Matter, the whole, that community. And I was one of the people that amplified the voices and was around it. You can check out my old blogs from writerscape.com in the blog. I would talk about that. Anyways, I was really involved in the community, and I got a lot of hate and a lot of, because they're like, how dare you to try to take away or, and then realize that too is like our taxes pay for all these atrocities, all these things, and then the police brutality and all that time, and then all these people feeling comfortable in the status quo, and then I make them uncomfortable because I'm not okay with racism, white supremacy, and capitalist systems that oppress other people and hurt other people. It just, for me, that was just like, what the hell? But I kept going. We kept going. Okay, so I'm coming back. I'm glad that other people are still going back and talking about what's going on and how genocide is really, really hurtful for our planet. Okay, it's actually even more hurtful than plastic or oil, gas, and all of that. Okay, but I'm glad that these videos are out there so that I'm able to continue showcasing what I've been starting from the beginning from this YouTube channel. So those who have been here for a long time, you know what's up, right? Thank you so much for liking, commenting, sharing the video. Supporting me, supporting everybody who is connected to my community. Okay, may God multiply that 10 times full, and we protect each other. That's another thing that I'm learning here, that learning to stick around with your community. For example, those who are dealing with discrimination of homophobic, you should be around people who are LGBTQ and everybody who is pro-Palestine, pro-Black liberation, brown people, like, you know what I'm saying? Those who are dealing with racism and stuff like that, and dealing with white supremacy or extremists or Zionists, others of you hang out with people that, especially if you're dealing with Islamophobia or, and you're dealing with Zionists and stuff like that, like these people are like super massive abuser and psychopath, right? So make sure that you are surrounded by the community so they protect you, so they keep you in that nice cocoon, so that way you are able to defend yourself and not think that you're alone in this, okay? Because you're not. Same thing with single moms. If you're dealing with a very abusive, toxic ex or something like that, or if you have any kids with this person, you need to collaborate and stick around with other women who have dealt with stuff like that, or dads, because there's also dads who deal with very toxic mothers and stuff like that, and also they keep it quiet. So make sure that you are sticking around with people that have dealt with situations like you, okay? Because that way not only they protect you, but they protect your children if you have children or something like that, or help you during this time of like divorce or separation and stuff like that. Okay, we're here to help each other. We're not here to be in competition and comparing and stuff like that. All those of you who have dealing with people that have something against you, if you have a disability or something like that, or you're dealing with a mental illness or a mental health issues or crisis or something like that, stick around with people who have similar energies as you. That protects you, that keeps you, not only that, but also prayers. Pray so that God shows you what type of community, what type of friends, what type of people that can help you during this time. Community, help each other. Unity helps each other, not separation. Okay, so this video is gonna help for those in my climate change community and advocacy, those who are doing humanitarian work, but especially people that should be continued to, as we protesting and doing the boycotting and talking about humanitarian and trying to stop a genocide, multiple of them. Okay, right now I think there's I just saw there's a blackout also is going on in Sudan right now, so we all eyes in Sudan as well. Okay, so yes, it's a lot, but it's part of white supremacy tactics. Don't get confused, stay focused. Okay, but this is one of the reasons that a lot of y'all, I've been saying this for 7-8 years now, this.
Impacts of war, genocide, and mass violence are way more detrimental to the earth and the environment than using plastic straws or driving your car or any of the other 8 billion things that big corporations and the government try to tell us that we need to do to protect the earth. And I'm not saying that we as individuals don't have a role to play in protecting our environment, because we absolutely do, but the role that we as individuals play oftentimes gets overinflated so that corporations and the government and whomever can continue carrying on and terrorizing the environment while we're blaming each other. For example, not only was white phosphorus banned because of its brutal impact on the human body, but because its toxic properties linger in our soil and water for years, which devastates the environment. Or how the overwhelming majority of CO2 emissions in the entire world came from the first 60 days of Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. Half of those emissions came from US planes sending weapons to Israel. And this is outside of the regular impact of war and conflict on the world, including land destruction and agricultural destruction, pollutants in the air from all of the weaponry and all of the fires, and destruction of buildings, which leaves behind tons and tons of toxic debris. So this Earth Day, while we should absolutely continue the small things that we as individuals do to protect our Earth, we should also be using this day and every day to call for a ceasefire, because the best thing we can do for our environment is end this.
A Senate inquiry has just exposed 65 years of secrets from billionaire oil companies. They kept secret the science on climate change dating back to 1959, with Edward Teller, yes, like the one from the Oppenheimer movie, warning them about sea level rise from the burning of fossil fuels. They kept secret that they knew natural gas was not a renewable resource, but that it sounded better to all of us. And here's the real shocker with their latest secret. Do you remember talking to someone about your individual carbon footprint? You could make a pledge to big oil on their websites about how you were going to reduce your impact on the climate crisis. Well, it turns out that their own climate pledges are a massive lie. This is an internal PowerPoint slide from Shell's government relations team, advising that they should not imply or suggest that net zero is a Shell target. Meanwhile, this is what Shell's website looks like as of right now. This deception is delaying climate action. So our job is to expose these secrets to as many people as possible.
Did you know that energy companies are directly profiting off of the genocide in Palestine? Israel has granted 12 new licenses for gas exploration off the coast of Gaza to BP and 5 other companies. Though these gas reserves are in Palestinian waters, Israel has been firing upon any Palestinian fishermen who go into these areas. Through these licenses, energy companies like BP profit off the genocide of Palestinians. A new anti-imperialist climate collective called Energy Embargo for Palestine has emerged in the UK to enact calls from Palestinian workers to disrupt the energy markets and the energy flow to Israel. On Sunday, these activists, along with the Free Palestine Coalition, occupied and shut down the British Museum to pressure them to drop their new 10-year partnership with BP. Through this association, Britain is complicit with the genocide of the Palestinian people and Israeli settler colonialism. We must cut ties with all companies that fund Israel's murder and mass displacement of Palestinians. Support Energy Embargo for Palestine by following their social media and joining their actions. And if you're not in the UK, take inspiration from these actions and organise in your own communities to dismantle and disrupt these energy companies. And make sure you share this video and pop a comment below to boost it in the algorithm.
Okay, so let's clear a little bit of why people are protesting, okay? Because we need to make this very clear. Because if all these things that wasn't happening in the world, the injustices, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the racism, the media propaganda, all this bullshit to try to hide the truth, we wouldn't be doing this if it was not something being done that is wrong, right?
Hey everyone, this is Bisam from Gaza. I'm still alive, and during the past 5 months of playing basketball, I've sprained my ankle like dozens of times. There was that time when I suffered from a severe muscle strain in my back, and it required 6 months of treatment. Another time, my leg and foot were splintered, and each time my injuries healed. And I went back to the court stronger than before. And the real thank you goes to Adnan al-Bursh. Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, one of the most skilled and the kindest doctors ever. Okay, ever. He is one of those with exceptional experience and skills. He was an orthopedic, one of the best in Gaza Strip, maybe if not in Palestine. So Dr. Adnan al-Bursh refused to leave Shifa hospital. He refused to evacuate the north to the south because he believed that he needed to serve the patients in the north of Gaza Strip, so he evacuated the Shifa hospital to the Indonesian hospital also in the north of Gaza Strip. Then the barbaric and the terrorist army, Israeli army, kidnapped him from the Indonesian hospital, and now after 100 days we discovered that he was killed under torture in the Israeli prisons. Dr. Adnan al-Bursh was a very skilled man. He was the first doctor to do the platinum operations successfully in 2010 in Gaza Strip. Do you realize who are they killing? The most skilled people and the kindest people we meet, the kindest people we know. I remember one time in 2021, I asked Dr. Adnan al-Bursh to not to talk about my injury in front of my coach because I wanted to participate in the championship very bad. I wanted to participate it, and then he accepted my request, and he did not talk to my coach about my injury, and he provided me with the daily care until he treated me completely after we won the championship. We will never forget him. We will never forgive his killer, whatever will happen. Never. I remember when I was in Nasser Medical Complex, like maybe 120 days ago, like 4 months, I suffered again from the same strain in my muscles in my back, and I was searching about him, like telling anyone, give me the number of Adnan al-Bursh. Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, he's the only one who knows what I'm suffering from, and he knows like how to treat me. And they all told me the same. There is no signal in the north of Gaza Strip. He's still in the Indonesian hospital. If this is not genocide, you need to tell me what is it. He's not only a professional doctor, orthopedic. He did not only serve in every single escalation and war against Gazans in the emergency for days and nights. He's a very kind person, a father, a brother, a friend. And all Gazan athletes were treated there in his clinic, besides me and my teammates. Rest in peace, Dr. Adnan. Rest in peace. We owe you everything. And thanks for that time when you did not tell my coach about my injury. That was a very important championship. A very important one. We will never forget you.
Get out of the way, get out of the way. Shame on you! Shame! You get paid to beat up children! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! How does it feel to get paid to beat up children?
You're fighting children! That's what I do! Shame on you! Your children will hate you for this! They will never forgive you! You are choosing to defend rich and rich billionaires!
So these campus protests have really shown a lot of sleeping people that the only violence really being perpetrated is by the state and, of course, by Zionists. In case you're not tracking, this is UCLA last night. Pro-occupation people shooting firework, blasting baby crying sounds, which is like some CIA black site shit at the pro-Palestine encampment. And while these protests will end, at least temporarily, the semester's ending after all, it's really advanced the discourse and expanded visibility. Sad to say that people will notice more about liberal arts majors getting terrorized by the police than they will about Palestinians being terrorized by the IDF, but let's talk about college protests, the imperial boomerang, and a lesson in state violence. New Colonial Outcast podcast, out now. How the police were militarized from the start. A lot of people like to say, in the 70s, in response to the Vietnam backlash, they got increasingly more militarized and it's only gotten worse. It's like, nah, dude, they've always been militarized. It's just, getting more apparent now. And one example of the sociological dynamics of the imperial boomerang, this is a great example of the imperial boomerang. Other examples are about how modern police were also born out of slave patrols, another Anglo counterinsurgency force in the Caribbean and Carolinas. A modern example of the imperial boomerang is how our cops go to Israel to train with the IDF, use Israeli technology and spyware, the same technology and spyware that is counterinsurgent in nature and used to enforce occupation and apartheid on Palestinians, and then they come back to America to use those same forms of colonial coercion on American citizens. Let this episode serve as your periodic reminder that in addition to slave patrols, American policing has its roots in union busting, property protection, and scab defense, i.e. the protecting of non-union workers from striking workers. Cops have been on the wrong side of every labor struggle and have always moved to squash civil dissent on and off academic campuses. They were the main perpetrators of violence during the civil rights movement, the Vietnam backlash, South African apartheid, the 2003 Iraq War, the BLM movement, and now the pro-Palestine movement. It's almost like they don't protect and serve the people, but instead the interests of the ruling elite. Okay, essay over. Travis, do you feel like you saw any of this at play yesterday at UT?
Yeah, I mean, if cops had anything to do with protecting, personal rights or freedoms or the individual or anything remotely like that, they wouldn't be in there yanking college students at a peaceful protest off a field violently. To your point, the roots absolutely predict the behavior, right? And the roots, especially in the United States, are all property protection. Slaves are property. The factory's property. These are all property and capitalism defenses, right? That's what the police have always been for. They're always there to defend the guy, the landowner, the guy making money, the guy that owns the factory, the guy who owns the school, or in this case, probably, I don't know, Greg Abbott's ego, something like that, right? But then nothing there had anything to do with serving and or protecting. So, well, unless you mean, again, protection of, not us.
Yeah, the property of the South Lawn on UT campus, in between in between the UT Tower and Littlefield Fountain. That's what they were protecting. Not the students that inhabit the campus, not actual humans, but yeah. So that I just thought I would use that little essay to frame how we approach these protests. So. Just so
and I would argue they're even ideologically they're protecting some kind of political estate, right? Some kind of political ideological estate. You know, just because it's not physical doesn't mean it's not, you know, some kind of establishment property. I think the concepts jive.
I was gonna say, like, okay, besides all that, I also see a symbolic reason. You know, it's the sending the police to break up a demonstration against Israel. It's also a symbolic move, you know, by not just the university, but also, the Texas government, the city of Austin. It's their way of saying, hey, look, Israel, we got your back. Okay, these enemies, your enemies are our enemies. That's the symbolic gesture, because okay, obviously these kids weren't doing any damage to property. They're sitting in a fucking circle on the grass.
Well, they were trespassing. They were trespassing.
Trespassing, but who gives a fuck? Yeah. People, you could a lot of people trespass on property all the time.
And still inherently property oriented action, right? Yeah, trespassing. Oh God.
Even under a capitalist reasoning logic, that's not what this is about, in my opinion. It's a symbolic move to say, hey, look, Texas stands with Israel. That's what I saw, because they don't want the PR of showing these protests against Israel being left untouched. So by sending in muscle to go take care of them, it's like, we got you, bro. We don't like these guys either. Anybody who stands against you stands against us. It's the solidarity with Israel.
Right. I do believe the politics are also partially just inherently racial and xenophobic, right? It's not only are they brown people, they're brown Muslims, you know, and so you cannot back them. We will not back them.
Right. And so another one of Greg Abbott, guys, the governor of Texas is Greg Abbott. He's an absolute Zionist to the core, Christian, of the Christian persuasion. He's also implements, apart from the whole Israel-Palestine issue, incredibly racist and xenophobic policies towards people of Hispanic descent as well, with his border policy that's intentionally cruel and brutal. And, you know, like what, lining the Guadalupe River with
he's responsible for, you know, people drowning. He's responsible for children getting separated. He's responsible for families getting put in cages, you know, refugee families. He's responsible for a lot of gnarly shit.
Right. But he decries racism openly, specifically anti-Semitism. So he says, like, we will not tolerate anti-Semitism on school campus.
The anti-Semitism bill that was passed in the House, 320 votes to 91, was made specifically to give the U.S. empire the ability to prosecute any pro-Palestine protesters, as well as anyone that criticizes Israel. It does this by codifying into law the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism. Two of those definitions are extremely problematic, such as claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. The other definition is drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazi. Based on those two definitions, they could label wanting a two-state solution or claiming that the land belongs to Palestinians, or even claiming that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians as anti-Semitic, and therefore it would be illegal.
This is how that mob of violent Zionists pulled up to UCLA last night. Playing sounds of a baby crying like the IOF did in Gaza in order to bait Palestinians out of their homes so that way they could unalive them.
Where's your ancestors from? Why are you even here? You're just another dummy, right? Another stupid guy. No fucking brain, right? Just an idiot. Hello, guys.
Harassing journalists that are there to cover the event. This is footage from the Wall Street Journal, and this is extremely problematic because look at their caption. Clashes broke out between groups of protesters at a pro-Palestinian encampment. This is not clashes between the groups. This is one group attacking the other one. There they're violently beating up a protester. And we're all familiar with this heavily roided piece of work right here. Now, he's already been identified, but I'm not going to steal the thunder on that. Look at him, look at him. The way he tries to antagonize the encampment because this guy wants to have a fight. Oh yeah, look at that. Tell me you can't get it up half the week without telling me you can't get it up half the week. I'm curious how many DV charges this guy already has under his belt. And here's a little more of that victim mentality from him.
Ask me about my wiener!
And unfortunately, King Joffrey here was not the worst of the whole ordeal last night. The worst part was law enforcement taking 3 fucking hours to do any interference with the violence that was happening against the encampment. They just stood around there for an hour as soon as they got there. And they made no arrests. So essentially, law enforcement is saying that you can attack an encampment with peaceful protesters with mace, physical violence, psychological harm, but God forbid you are one of these protesters, grass is grass and you're going to jail. 300 students were arrested at Columbia University, and not one person who was violent at UCLA was arrested. This clearly was an act behalf on UCLA and the police department to break up this encampment, because they didn't want to do it themselves over fear of public scrutiny, so they sent their dogs out. Their little covert operation of having these kids act on their behalf was just way too obvious when they stood around for an hour just watching them abuse the people in the encampment. 25 students were reported to have been hospitalized overnight for injuries. And all this is doing for your cause is just making these encampments bigger and on more college campuses. So congratulations. Free Palestine.
You're going to see this also all over your feed today, rightfully so. So if you see it, anybody who posts about it, boost it, repost it, share it. Because the Zio crew at UCLA is single-handedly tearing down and destroying decades of Israeli propaganda and Zio propaganda and millions that Israel poured into the propaganda campaign against pro-Palestine protesters. Bravo, job well done, because you can't say we're scared for our safety on campus and we're the victims. You can't keep that up. The visuals that came out of this attack by Zios and Israelis alone is going to lose them even more support by Americans, especially those that were in the middle. These are college kids who were minding their business, and Israeli Zios came and started brutally attacking them. Let's get into it. So the first thing that should be noted is that the police didn't show up for 2.5 hours. There was campus security there. I saw them on live, just sitting and watching and eating their popcorn. So it's so funny how when it's one side, the cops can show up immediately and by the hundreds. But then when actual violence is taking place and they're on the side of the people causing the violence and oppression, then they just sit and watch. They wonder why ACAB. They wonder why we're teaching each other how to fight back against them and we're learning that we outnumber them. But honestly, that should just be a fucking wake-up call for anyone who hasn't realized yet. It's us against them. They're not here to protect us, okay? That's why you hear chanted at the college campuses, who protects us? We protect us. Who protects us? We protect us. And it's just another clear indication. The ones that the cops are defending are almost always the oppressor. But here you can see a person being carried away after the counter demonstrators, let's call them what they are, Israelis and Zios, confronted the pro-Palestinian camp. As you can see here, here's a gang of the Zios and Israelis beating up a student. They also threw explosives into the camp. As you can see here, there's more visuals that are more disturbing, like students with their heads cracked open and bleeding down their face, which I can't show here or it will get taken down. And before on the live, before they physically attacked them, they were trying to mentally attack them. So they were standing outside the encampment with a loudspeaker playing a children's nursery rhyme over and over and over. And this nursery rhyme was the one used by the IOF in Palestine when they captured Palestinians and they were torturing them by playing the same song over and over. So again, victim where? We're scared where? Shout out to the UCLA students for holding their ground and having each other's backs. I'm so sorry you had to deal with these unhinged psychopaths, but it was not in vain. We are not going to let it be in vain. Every single person with a platform should be posting these images and this story today because it literally destroys their victim act and decades of propaganda. Some of the pro-Israeli Zios were ex-IOF. So they're just bringing their bullshit here to American soil. which all of the pro-American people, where are you? Where are you? Let me tell you something. Come close, all you pro-America people. It's only a matter of time before it's a right that they took from you that you want to fight for, that you got these goons coming after you to protect a foreign country and foreign government that has more power and control in the US than you do as a citizen. Especially when the president of this United States is supporting them more than his own citizens. It's only a matter of time before it's you.
In case you missed it, the Freedom Flotilla's vessel, Handala, is sailing right now. The Handala, named after the iconic symbol of the Palestinian people, is for the children of Gaza and aims to challenge and break the illegal blockade of Gaza, to shed light on the inhumane measures taken against Palestinian children by Israel, and to highlight the complicity of the European and the US governments in the ongoing genocide. It will also conduct solidarity events around the world as Handala sails to various ports across Europe. Please follow our social media to stay up to date.
This is how the US media is manufacturing consent against American university students in the same way, ironically, they were able to manufacture consent for Israel to commit their genocide in Gaza.
This is not what students bring to school, okay? This is what professionals bring to campuses and universities. These are heavy industrial chains that were locked with bike locks, and this is what we encountered on every door inside of Hamilton Hall. And our guys would not be stopped. They did a fantastic job of entering into that location and taking people into custody without incident last night. They took about 40 to 50 people into custody inside of the lobby of Hamilton Hall.
Putting aside the way he is shamelessly praising his men for brutalizing non-armed protesters who are literally kids. So here are the chains in question. You know, like, these are not just regular bike chain, they are recommended by Columbia University Public Safety. And not only that, they also recommended by NBC. A reporter confronted him about these chains.
LOL.
Look at this.
This is the same chain.
Look at this. This is an industrial.
Is this the same thing?
This is not.
I wonder if we have seen something similar, something manufacture consent for starting a war. Let me think. Oops, didn't mean to show the fake WMDs that they showed in the United Nations Security Council in order to start a war in Iraq. Let's move on to the New York Times. This is what the New York Times used in order to cover the event of last night at UCLA, in which a mob of pro-Israelis who are not students attacked students in camping who are pro-Palestinian, throwing at them mace, fireworks, beating some of them up, like literally make them bleed. Notice they're not showing the group who are assaulting the pro-Palestinian students, because all of this are the encampment. They're not showing the group who are assaulting. They are showing the group who are getting assaulted and trying to defend themselves. In the article, they state it was a clash. They did not state that the pro-Palestinian encampment were the ones who got assaulted. No, it was a clash between two equal groups, right? And funny enough, they said in the bottom, it was not immediately determined who was responsible for the violence. Remember this image and how the media can manipulate the events and the facts in order to give you a wrong perception, in order to confuse you between the victim and the perpetrator. Like, we literally have images of the ones who attacked the encampment, like with their names and everything. Like, they are recognized. Like, we actually have testimonies of the people who got assaulted. But poor New York Times do not know. You know, I remember well enough during the events of the 2011 revolution in Egypt, saying stuff on the media, like crazy stuff, like saying like the protesters are bringing with them firebolts. And people, wallahi, would literally believe them. Funny that I see it now, but in different language, in English, by the most democratic country in the world. A country that gives you the freedom to assemble, the freedom of speech. Yet they brutalize their own students, their American students, bro, for the benefit of a foreign state. And that's the United States of America for you.
Let's get you up to speed. Robert Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots, referred to the pro-Palestine student protests on Columbia campus as virulent hate and threatened to stop sending millions of dollars to the university until the protests are under control. Students at Emory University protesting against the genocide in Israel today were tased by cops and hit with tear gas. Video shows one of the protesters was tased while they were already handcuffed. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has referred to the college protests as horrific, yet Netanyahu also did this to a university in Gaza. Lastly, protests at the University of Indiana spotted a sniper on a rooftop from law enforcement to police a peaceful pro-Palestine student protest. The question for you is, what's being protected here when you see all this? When cops are called to campuses to violently deal with protests demanding an end to genocide, and billionaires are threatening to pull funding from certain colleges while protesters are having Seder dinner at a pro-Palestine encampment, what do you believe the colleges and donors are trying to protect?
Dear Gen Z, we've accused you of not caring what people think, always doing your own thing, but look at you doing your thing now. We've called you entitled, but you're reminding the world that everyone is entitled to freedom and justice. Thank you. Thank you for putting your future on the line for a better future for everyone. Thank you for holding down the fort. Thank you for being stubborn, hard-headed about justice. Thank you for reminding us that it's okay to rock the boat when it matters. Thank you for reminding us the youth are alive and well. You know you're shaking things up when old men in suits make statements about you. Know that they're terrified. They know that students have always been on the right side of history. They know the people, united, will never be defeated. It's your time to lead. Don't stop. Keep going. We're right behind you.
Columbia and Barnard students built a Gaza solidarity encampment, and the university sent riot cops to arrest them, destroyed their encampment, and initially put all their belongings in an alleyway. And now at least 50 Barnard students who were allegedly at the protest have been suspended with no due process. So this is a look at what's actually going on at Columbia University and the 34 hours that precursed President Shafiq sending NYPD riot cops on the Columbia campus for the first time since 1968. At 4 a.m. on April 17th, student protesters set up tents on the East Butler lawn on Columbia University to launch the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, allowing President Shafiq, who has notoriously suppressed the free speech of the Free Palestine movement on campus, a little surprised the morning she wakes up and has to testify to Congress. The student protesters made clear that they plan to occupy that space until the university divests from company ties with Israel and gives complete financial transparency about the school's investment. The student protesters made a public statement saying, "We refuse to accept a world where the death of over 30,000 Palestinians is normal, acceptable, or profitable. We are in complete solidarity with the Palestinian people who resiliently resist decades of occupation, apartheid, and genocide. We remain steadfast in our commitment to see a free Palestine within our lifetime." The students acknowledged that the Gaza Solidarity Encampment is a continuation of the legacy of the 1968 anti-Vietnam and anti-segregation protests that occurred on Columbia's campus. These student protesters were organized to stay as long as needed with shelter, solar panels and charging station, organized food and supplies, and even had built bathroom tents. So by 9:40 that morning, administrative staff started to come to the encampment and threaten student protesters with immediate suspension if they did not leave.
If you do not disperse by 11 a.m., you will be suspended.
Immediate suspension with no due process is against the university's own policies. On the outside perimeter of the encampment, there were a few Zionists that attempted to harass the protesters, but those in the encampment went out of their way to not engage with these people and stayed focused on building community activities like singing songs about their goal of divestment and attending a teach-in session on de-occupation.
The apartheid movement was born of an internal mobilization.
The vast majority of students on campus have visibly and publicly supported the Gaza Solidarity Encampment. And when there was a potential police sweep on the first night, hundreds in the community of Columbia and Barnard came to join the protest, even creating a human chain around the encampment. Day 2 began with 3 Barnard students getting emails that they are suspended and evicted from their housing immediately with no due process.
Who else got suspended? Yeah, wait, so I got suspended, me and Soph as well. Soph as well? So it's just the 3 of us now.
These three just ended up being the first of over 50 of Barnard students suspended in relationship to the encampment, and it should be noted that their suspensions took place 2 hours and 53 minutes before NYPD entered the encampment, and that they are all publicly outspoken student organizers. One of the first three suspended is Isra Hirsi, who is also the daughter of Ilhan Omar, who in the day previous to her daughter's suspension grilled President Shafiq about her treatment of Free Palestine student protesters. This is a little bit of what Isra had to say shortly after her suspension.
Me and two other Barnard students who've actively been seen as lead organizers and been doing interviews have just received notice that we are immediately suspended, or immediately interim suspended, which means that I cannot access my resident hall, cannot access a dining hall, I cannot access campus, cannot access any buildings. Yeah, and basically I cannot go to class, I cannot turn in any assignments, I cannot do really anything. And this just comes at you can just tell this is an intimidation tactic. They sent out a warning to every single student here, but they obviously cannot reach every single student. Oh, okay. If the student poses an ongoing threat of disruption or interference with the normal operations of the college, that is the only grounds on which I've been suspended on. Just disruption. So, nothing clear, nothing else explicit.
And since Barnard has made banned on-campus posters for these organizers that are being circulated on the front desks of all Barnard dorms. Context is important, so don't forget that even before this encampment, these student protesters have experienced the banning of their SJP and JBP chapters, doxing from Zionist students and external Zionist groups, ruthless harassment from an on-faculty university professor, a chemical attack from a former IOF soldiers leading to dozens of hospitalizations, illegal surveillance from the university and the NYPD continuously attacking any protests outside their gates, and 5 students being arbitrarily suspended with no due process on April 5th. So an hour and a half later at 12, even with the news of the newest suspensions of the Barnard students, the student protesters attempted to continue on with their programming, which was a rally. But were cut short because they were informed that the NYPD had entered the campus and were about to attack, as Columbia University, specifically President Shafiq, had called in the NYPD to sweep the encampment. So the organized student protesters, ready for this level of repression, made a circle linking arms in the center of their encampment so the whole university could watch their arrest.
We will not stop, we will not rest, we will not rest.
And as the riot cops started to flood the encampment, so did thousands in the community of Columbia Barnard to support the student protesters. The first few arrests from the NYPD not only included Barnard and Columbia students, but clearly marked legal observers. And before beginning arrests, the NYPD pushed credentialed press to the sidelines, but allowed their uniformed surveillance staff to film on the grass within the encampment. The NYPD not only brought riot cops to arrest the student protesters on their own campus, but also some of the highest ranking and most fascist NYPD, which included the literal killer cop, Chief of Patrol John Schell. So we should all never forget that Columbia University allowed a literal killer cop on their campus to arrest their students for protesting a genocide. Again, I can't stress this. What's on the screen right now is the quote-unquote counterterrorism unit of the NYPD, the Strategic Response Group, arresting student protesters for protesting on their campus, called for by Columbia University President Shafiq. This is the first time since 1968 that Columbia has called the police to arrest student protesters. After 108 individuals were arrested, the university called in sanitation workers to put the encampment in bins as the riot cops just stood around and then dumped all of their belongings in an alleyway. And then the administration began issuing a new wave of suspensions to anyone who attempted to pick up their belongings. And now, over 50 Barnard students who were allegedly at the protest have been suspended and evicted from their housing with no due process, meaning that over 1% of Barnard has been suspended and evicted for protesting against a genocide on their campus. However, minutes after the arrest of the 108, other student protesters jumped over the fence to the west lawn and have continued the Gaza Solidarity encampment there. The Columbia Gaza Solidarity encampment has sparked additional encampments and protests around the country and has proven to be a continuation of the legacy of the 1968 student protests at Columbia. So we should all keep our eyes on Columbia University, demand the suspension charges be dropped, and most importantly, keep talking about and fighting for Palestine.
Welcome to Arrest Training 101 in Introduction. If you have any other tips, please leave them in the comments. Starting off, prepping for potential police violence and arrest. Number 1, turn off Face ID and fingerprints to unlock your phone. You're going to want to unlock by code only. No contact lenses allowed. It sucks, but take it from me, you do not want to be pepper sprayed with contact lenses in. That shit burns for hours. On that note, bring water you can flush your eyes with. Do not wear makeup. Chemical irritants like tear gas will stick to your mascara and lipstick. Wear long sleeves and layers. You're going to want to cover identifiable features like tattoos, but also jail cells are really cold and you don't know how long you're going to be in there. Try to avoid wearing things that are unique, things with like big logos that are very identifiable. Wear a face mask. You're going to want to protect yourself from potential chemical attacks. Have your ID and some cash on hand. Here in Boston, organizers are recommending about $40 to cover bail. Write the jail support number on your arm. If you don't know it, find your protest organizers. They will help you. You need to stay hydrated and eat well. They are not going to take care of you in jail. If you have long hair like me, put it in a bun. A braid and a ponytail, those are handles for cops. If you're also like me and have a lot of piercings, try and take those out. If you're on your period, bring extra tampons and pads. The cops are not going to help you out. Be aware that if you wear a hair covering, the cops may remove it publicly. If you are non-binary or trans, prepare to tell the cops your assigned gender at birth. I know that it fucking sucks, but it's for your safety. Do not post photos with people's faces or other identifiable things like tattoos or piercings. If you have medication, keep it in its original pill bottle on your person. If it's not clearly your prescription bottle, they're going to throw it out whether you need it or not. If you are pregnant or think you might be pregnant, do not wait around to find out if the cops are going to use chemical attacks like tear gas. It can cause miscarriages. Lastly, avoid arrest if you can. It's not fun, and we need you back out there tomorrow. That being said, if you are getting arrested, first, ask the police, am I being arrested? If the answer is yes, do what they say. Do not fight back, do not go limp. If you do, they are going to try and charge you with resisting arrest and battery of an officer. Cops lie, do not give them the chance. Out loud, say, I am not resisting arrest. Ideally, you can document it with film or they'll have their body cams on, supposedly. And if they're hurting you, you need to say loudly where and how. Do not lose your cool. If they are zip tying you, actively flex your wrists. It'll give you just a little bit of wiggle room and it'll be a little bit more comfortable when you relax your wrists. Collect as much officer information as you can. I'm talking names, badge numbers, cars, what jail you're being taken to, etc. Try to report that information out to your arrest support organizers at the protest. Your new favorite phrase is, I am exercising my right to remain silent and I will not speak without my attorney present. I want an attorney. Learn it, love it, and use it. Silent treatment will not help your case with cops, and they need to hear you say out loud that you want an attorney. If you have a unique name, make sure that they spell it correctly when they're booking you. You need to double, triple, quadruple check it. They can and will intentionally spell your name wrong just to make your life harder. Same thing with your address, especially if you're an out-of-state college student. You're going to need to get that court notice to show up to court, and you don't want to get screwed over an administrative error. Lastly, call that jail support number and the arrest support organizers at your protest. They're going to try their best to help you from the outside. If you don't know who these people are or what their phone number is, go find your protest organizers or the medics. They will help you. Thank you to the tough student organizers who gave me most of these tips. You guys rock. If there's anything I've missed or anything else left to add, please add it in the comments. And stay safe out there, friends.
This is just a message for anybody that's posting at encampments or going live at encampments or just anything like that. The Zio bots have been upped by like hundreds of thousands. Like they're out in insane numbers like I have not seen in the last 7 months. And also the racists are out. So you're probably, if like me, experiencing more hate and attacks than you've seen in the last 7 months. And I just want to remind you that that means we're winning. that means we're winning. All they're doing is crying and bitching, saying, well, this is not going to get me on your side, or this is going to make everyone hate you guys. No one likes you guys because you're annoying. This is not for you. We're not talking to you. We're not trying to recruit you. We're not trying to run a PR marketing campaign to recruit you. These protests and movements have nothing to do with you. I know all of you are narcissists, so you can't understand that. And you're sitting in it from your privilege thinking like, this has to be for me because why else would anyone in the world do anything? It's not the point of these protests. The point of these protests is to get these schools to divest, is to get our government to stop funding a fucking genocide. And it's working. It's working. Campuses are divesting. This is putting pressure on them. They can't ignore this. If you look at history, student movements have moved the needle significantly. That's why Satan Yahoo is shitting his pants, getting on national television, trying to tell Americans what they are and aren't allowed to do. And that's why all the Zios and all the racists are coming into our comments like it's their full-time job, throwing insults at us because they think that that's going to stop us. At this point, 7 months in, they still haven't realized that we do not give a fuck what they have to say. This is what they sound like. Wah, 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 wah. Literally like the Charlie Brown. We don't care what you have to say. Ignore them. Ignore them. They are ramping up and they are becoming even more unhinged than they've been the last 7 months because we're winning. We're winning. They wouldn't be freaking out like this or putting all this money towards it if we weren't making progress. So to me, this is a green flag that we're moving in the right direction. And anybody who doesn't understand the point of these protests and is worried about how people perceive them, you need to do some inner work. Have a good day.
Hello everyone, my name is Umnia and I'm 21 years old. I'm currently in Sudan and I make videos as someone who's still living in the war. This is probably the hardest video I will ever have to make because it's the anniversary of our war. It's been a year of ruthless violence, a year of death, a year of an apocalypse. No words in any dictionary, in any language can ever be able to describe the horrors that we've seen and experienced and continue to experience to this day. Over 10 million people are displaced. 25 million people struggle with acute hunger. And death is, I don't even know how many people have died and how many people are still dying. But let me paint an image for you. Migratory birds have changed the route so they can come to Khartoum and feed on corpses. Khartoum, my city, my home, where I lived for 21 years, have become a haven for dogs to breed due to how many corpses are rotting over there. Cemeteries are filled to the brim. There are mass graves inside neighborhoods. My people are not comfortable, dead or alive. We can still not honor our dead. For a whole year, I've been homeless. I've lost more than 5 family members. I've lost my home, my life assets, everything that we ever owned. My parents have worked for 40 years to provide for us, to build our house, to buy their cars, to do everything. And in a split of one day, they lost everything. Just last year, I had just graduated from uni. I was interning. I just started my life and I had hopes and dreams like any of you. And now, I'm not even sure if I'm alive. Because how are we alive when we lost everything that makes us human? When we lost our homes, when we lost our friends, when we lost our families, when we lost our life? Like, is this life? Is this living? Is living just breathing? Because I sure as hell don't feel like I'm alive. And I'm sick and tired of it. I'm not gonna ask you to do anything anymore. I don't want anything from any of you. I'm making those videos just for our pain to be acknowledged. I've lost hope in this world. I don't think anything will change. I don't think this war will stop. I don't think my people will ever be free. But I will not let you be comfortable as you turn a blind eye to our suffering. I will keep reminding you over and over that my people are getting killed for your gold. Times and times, Africans have been butchered and genocided for the benefit of the West. And enough of that. We are no longer stupid. We are no longer ignorant. We see through you. We see through your games. We see through your proxy wars. We see through those made up conflicts that you have created in our continent so you can take our resources. I will not let you be comfortable. The RSF are a genocidal militia that is funded and aided by the UAE, Israel, and Russia so they can plunder our resources and take our gold.
So don't let them gaslight you, confuse them about that. There's a reason why we are trying to, sorry guys, I gotta get up. Trying to reveal the truth to you all, right? There's a reason. Oh, hello. Oh, sorry. They're like protecting. I don't know if you can see them. The keys over there. There's a reason why we are doing this, right? It's not for nothing, right? But it's like it needs to be like clear out or something because it's like it is not supposed to be confusing. That's the point. That's why they create illusion for you guys to not do the right thing. Okay. Okay, that was good. And it is the right thing to advocate, to speak up. Okay, that's part of the motto. Like any abuser or controlling a manipulator or narcissist, they don't want you to speak up. They don't want you to talk about them abusing you because for one, they feel some type of satisfaction. They feel good when they cause harm or hurt other people, any type of form, any type of way. Okay. So when they are stopped from controlling, manipulating, and abusing you, they retaliate, right? They feel some type of way. They try spreading lies. They try acting like the victim. That it's kind of like it's your fault that they acting the way they're acting. Sounds familiar? So yeah, let's just dive in a little bit of like the protesting, because I know a lot of you is very confusing. It's like, why are we attacking the people who are trying to stop a genocide and protesting for the liberation of oppressed people? Like, why are we more upset about that, but then they're not upset enough about people being in a genocide right now and sharing that with you? It's in our face, right? Exposing them, the people who we think that we can trust, and then we feel safe with, we're not, right? But like I explained in part 1, and I'll probably try to attach it here, that part where it's all about money, greed, trying to, it's all about money. That too. Like most of the stuff that is happening on the peaceful protests is these people are getting paid. The Zionists and people that come in, disrupt the protests, or even this, you're also clear as day, you see it. A lot of y'all, you're noticing, like your own universities, a lot of universities, they've been profiting and they have to divest of genocide, and they're retaliating. They're obviously, but now you know why, right? Part 1 made that clear for you, right? Make sure you like that and comment that video, and you support that content creator that made a lot of y'all, especially me. I was like, holy. And then probably you decided to do your research and dive more, right? For example, I decided, like, now every time I see Trudeau tweets about Israel, I go and check how much he gets paid from 𝂀prt or any other organizations. And I know a lot of you feel some type of way because, and trust that intuition, when God tells you that there's someone that you know that is working for any organization and they're acting like Jewish, but they profit of genocide, they're just trying to cover their asses. They're just trying to cover the income they get from these people, and they're willing to do any evil atrocity type of way to not only shut the fuck you up, but also to make sure that that money keeps coming in from them, regardless of if they hurt you or if something happened to you or something like that. Okay, so I not for once, but right now, lately, every time I see the Orm Prime Minister, I talking with any Israel officials, the war criminals and pathological psychopathic people, and talking to them like, and then anti-Semitism, and saying this and saying the protest is as anti-Semitic or whatever, it makes me not feel safe. Okay, it doesn't, and I hope that a lot of you understand why at this point. For the past 7 months,
if you were honest about wanting to build community, you'd be focusing on divestment, but you're not, because you're full of fucking shit. If you cared about student safety, you would have denounced Israel's genocide of Palestinians. The Center for Islamic Life, Rutgers University, the Silru, that attack, that hate crime, never would have happened if you hadn't emboldened Zionists by not speaking out against genocide and calling it for what it is. You embolden genocide, you embolden racists, you embolden Zionists, and you endanger students. You don't get to play uninvolved and dumb and useless and shocked when acts of hate happens at Rutgers, and then also hold all this power. If you can't do your job, step the fuck down. Board of Governors, you shouldn't be governing shit. The Board of Trustees shouldn't be entrusted with shit. The President shouldn't be presiding over shit. You shouldn't be in charge of anything. You don't deserve to hold the power that you do, because you're abusing it. The position that you hold shouldn't even exist. You shouldn't be controlling the endowment. We should be. You motherfuckers in suits, you're all psychopaths, and you're actively manufacturing a shitty fucking world for us all. You laughing? You think it's funny? I don't know how you live with yourself, honestly. I see you. You hold dignity for yourself and no one else. Do you feel that? Do you? Fuck your norms. Fuck your notions of decorum. With your glasses of water, all sitting around the room, you didn't even hold space for us to come in. There's dignity for yourself and no one else. No dignity for Palestinians. No dignity for the students who are ignored and endangered. No dignity for faculty when you threaten them with firing if they speak out against the obvious. There's no dignity for the homeless of New Brunswick, Newark, and Camden is that Rutgers gentrifies. Rutgers is the biggest landlord in all these cities and raises the housing prices of these cities. And then all the other landlords raise their prices. And then the locals end up homeless and displaced. And then the Board of Governors sits in this room with your glasses of water and your dignity. Dignity for no one else. Rutgers actively displaces both the people of Palestine through our endowment and the people of New Brunswick, Newark, and Camden. And you want to talk about building community? You're full of fucking shit. Fuck your notions of respectability. You're not respectable people. I have no respect for you. Fuck your social norms. Your ideas of what is normal is what got us into this mess in the first fucking place, where we're invested in genocide. You think it's normal and acceptable to be funding and profiting off of genocide. This problem was brought to y'all years ago by the Endowment Justice Collective, and it was shot down. And now here we are, and it's so much worse. More are dead because you ignored it before, and you're still not acting. Every day that goes by, Israel murders more Palestinians in the most undignified of ways that I can't even describe how they're doing it because I'm going to throw the fuck up. I don't know if you guys are seeing this, or if you're actually tapped in, or if you're watching mainstream media. I don't understand what's going on through your guys' heads. Genuinely, I don't get it. You shouldn't be able to decide for the rest of us what is normal. You made us do all this work of drafting a 56-page fucking document, formally arguing that investing in human rights violations goes against university mission and policy. Why the fuck did we even have to do that? Why did we have to formally argue? Why are there no ethical standards for investment in the first place? There's only standards for divestment. You structured this so that we would have to argue with you and fight with you tooth and nail to get shit divested when we shouldn't even be invested in the first fucking place. And there's only a vague standard for investment, is that the investment has to follow Rutgers' mission. So I'm going to ask you about Rutgers' mission. Is it in line with Rutgers' mission to intentionally target civilian infrastructure, to force people to eat grass, to use tents as sanitary pads, to have C-sections with no anesthesia and no antiseptic? And then we're collaborating with Tel Aviv University for a Helix Hub in the name of progress and innovation and medicine. How do you not see the hypocrisy in that? Are you actually hearing me, Holloway? Can you respond if you're hearing me? Yeah? Okay. Why do we have to convince you that this shit is unacceptable? You do all this work, all these people coming together outside, and you're ignoring. This should be a task that you drop everything for. You shouldn't be focusing on anything else. All three campuses in New Brunswick, Newark, and Camden voted overwhelmingly to divest. You have a moral obligation both to us, the students, and to Palestinians whose blood is on all of your hands. Divest now.
Because you know that this guy will do anything for money now, right? Even fund genocide, even though it was literally have to be stopped by all protests and all the lawyers trying to stop him from defunding embargo, right? And recently it stopped, but then so it's like this guy is a pathological liar, and he will do anything for money. So just to let you know about that, like, I don't know about y'all, but that does not make me feel safe. And I think the energy of anybody who supports Israel, who has given money for a genocide, they should not be in office. They should not be your prime minister. They should not, like, it does not make you safe. And you shouldn't feel safe. Not only that, because he has also the capability in terms of immigration to accept certain people that come from these countries that have done a lot of atrocities and war crimes, for them to apply for either permanent residency or citizenship, and he's going to give it to them. So he's allowing not only pedophiles, because there's a lot of that in Israel, we already know that. Actually, let me show you this video so I can make it clear for you.
Hind is a reference to a woman who was killed.
Hi, Casey Hunt. So I want to have a conversation woman to woman, not little girl to little girl, but woman to woman. I am 27 years old, and you're 3 times my age. Well, you look it. So I was wondering, when did a 6-year-old become a woman? Because I would like to know quickly before I report you and put you on the registry list for thinking a 6-year-old is a woman. Because if anything, you need to be reported and put on a registry and removed from CNN, or CNN needs to be reported, and every single person needs to have their computer checked to have the audacity to then call a 6-year-old a woman. Because you know what you really just did? You just told grown men and grown women who are pedophiles that a 6-year-old is a woman. Yeah. Also, Casey, you had a daughter last year. So in 6 years, or 5 years actually, is it okay for the rest of us to call your daughter not a little girl, but a woman? Is it okay to call a kindergartner a woman? Because I, as someone who works with kindergartners and first graders, don't call them women or men. I call them little kids. So is it okay for your daughter to be called a woman by grown men in 6 years, 5 years actually? Casey Hunt, is it okay? Also, Casey, imagine, now that you're a mother of 2, one being a daughter, I don't have to use your son as an example. Imagine you allow your daughter to go out with a friend, right? Your daughter is 6, a little girl, you perv, and your daughter gives you a call, crying and screaming, and tells you that the car has been in a terrible accident and everyone in that car is dead. She's by herself in the car, dead, right? And the ambulance and the police are still 30 minutes out. Nobody can touch the car because if the car is touched, it will implode and explode and kill your daughter. So you're on the phone reading the Bible to her, because I'm assuming you're not Muslim, because we don't consider little girls women. But then you call, you're reading the Bible to her to calm her down and telling her that safety is on its way. And then on its way, right, the firemen and the police get into a car accident. So now your daughter is stuck and the time is ticking and the car ends up exploding and she's killed alone in that car after she watched everyone die. That's not a made-up story. That's Hind's story. But what's horrific about Hind's story, it was done intentionally. The story I gave for you was accidental. The story that was done to the little girl Hind that you called a woman was purposeful. The car that she was within was bombed on purpose and killed everybody but her. And then she called her mother, and her mother was reading the Quran to her. And as the EMS were on their way, so-called Israel bombed them so they couldn't get to her. So she sat in the car for 10 days alone, crying, couldn't call anyone, and died while bodies of her families were decomposing, and her mother was begging us to help her just to get the news that she died. A little girl was killed. Casey Hunt, you just called a 6-year-old a woman, but anyone that looks like this, I would not be surprised. Your hard drive needs to be checked if you think 6-year-olds are women. And CNN and every employee that works with CNN, their hard drive needs to be checked if you think a 6-year-old little girl is a woman. Free Palestine.
That banners have been hung from the hall. They read Hind's Hall and Intifada. Hind is a reference to a woman who was killed in...
A woman. A woman. Does that look like a woman to you? I feel like if I'm not constantly reminding you guys that everything that comes out of mainstream media is lies and propaganda, that I'm failing you. Hind Rajab was not a woman. She was a 6-year-old child. Also take note of that sanitizing language that they use. Oh, she was killed. She was just killed. This little girl was left for days with her dead relatives in a car beside her that had been murdered by an IOF airstrike. And then when the Red Crescent went to go rescue her, the ambulance ambulance was bombed. This is part of the pattern of our Western media and their dehumanization of Arab people. A little girl is not a little girl. She's a woman. A boy or an unarmed Palestinian man, they're all terrorists. They're all militants. I was thinking about this last night. I watched this documentary that a lot of you guys have told me about on my lives called The Occupation of the American Mind. It's a really good documentary. It came out about 4 years ago, and in it, they talk a lot about this, about how the entire Western media is insane propaganda and how they have systematically lied and lied and lied for decades, and how they have painted what is happening in Palestine in a completely deranged, demented, and dishonest way than what is actually happening there. And how the Israeli lobby works alongside our media in order to propagandize the American mind. If you guys want me to do a recap of like the highlights from that documentary and put it on here or YouTube, I can totally do that. Just let me know if you're interested in that. And now the veil is more being lifted and people are starting to see the truth. But if you turn on any mainstream media outlet, or you look at their social media, they still repeat the same talking points that they've been given by that lobby over and over and over again, and continue to smear the Palestinians, lie about what's happening in Gaza, and do deranged shit like calling a 6-year-old a woman. This was after I saw a segment last night from Chris Cuomo where he was doing deranged fear-mongering propaganda about TikTok and talking about how the reason why those of us who have become pro-Palestine and educated ourselves on what's happening, the reason why we're like this is because there's a nefarious force behind TikTok that's brainwashing us. It might be Iran. And what I found so laughable about his segment was that he was going off about how we're propagandized because of social media and TikTok, while he continues to repeat the same talking points that were written for him, that the same people in the media have been repeating since the 50s. He also asserted without any evidence that the college protests were full of outside agitators. Literally no evidence. Like, he just made it up. But we're supposed to believe him because he's credible. He cares about the facts, Jack, and he's only going to tell you what the facts are, well, unless and until it comes to the college protests, and then he's just going to make shit up. I couldn't help when I was watching The Occupation of the American Mind being so resentful of our own media and the lies that they've systematically told us for decades, because it was really good. And there's a lot of things that happened that they talk about in that documentary from 4 years ago that are very, very relevant to what's happening today. What they fail to understand is that it's not some dark, shadowy force in Iran that's propagandizing us and brainwashing us. They think it must be an outside, foreign, nefarious force that's making people change their minds. You're right, Chris and Casey. It couldn't be that we've seen a genocide on our own screens. In the past, other assaults on Gaza were not all over social media. We didn't see a genocide on our screens the way we've seen it this time. That's what's changed. And they know that. That's why they want to ban the app. They don't want the slaughter of the Palestinians to stop. They just don't want us to be able to see it anymore. But our trash media doesn't want to acknowledge or reckon with that. Instead, they just want to accuse us of all being lemmings who are being propagandized by Iran or some shit. Do not trust anything that's coming out of our corporate media, our mainstream media. And I don't just mean that's on TV or cable. I mean the way that they spread it on platforms, social media platforms like Twitter and YouTube, the way that they do it in print. Don't believe anything, because they have a vested interest in making sure that they smear and lie about the college protests, that they smear and lie about everybody that's in Gaza and about the genocide that's been happening for the last 7 months. So you will not be getting any accurate information from them.
Did you know that the United States has used half of all its Security Council vetoes in the history of the United Nations to protect Israel from the consequences of its actions and to prevent a Palestinian state? Half of all its vetoes in the history of the UN to protect a foreign state. The US has given hundreds of billions of dollars in aid to Israel. In the last 6 months alone, the US has approved over 100 weapon sales to Israel, most of these without any congressional approval, just being passed by Biden. You're a donkey if you think that's completely inconsequential. And the Israelis know this. That's why this tiny country that is smaller then the state of Massachusetts, with a population that is barely larger than the population of the city of London, has become the 10th largest weapons exporter in the world. The Israelis have turned the Holy Land into a weapons factory precisely so they can be less reliant on their daddy, the US, as they become increasingly isolated on the global stage, so they can continue their genocidal campaign against the Palestinians. Because the reality is that Joe Biden could have stopped this with a single phone call, but he won't, because he's a committed ideological Zionist who, in his own words, said that if there was no Israel, we would have to create an Israel. Because racist colonizers stick together.
Yep. Demonic entities, they stay together. Just like the same thing, Earth Angels, Earth Warriors, you should stick even stronger. The same way how you see protesters, they stick together, they hold against police brutality, against the imperialist fascist energy. You have to stick together. You know that a lot of people are spiritually like, oh, you know, the devil works hard and God works harder. But there's this saying like, oh, the devil works hard, but Israel works harder. It's the same thing. Zion is the same thing. They are demonic entities. They are from the dark world. And I need you guys to understand something. Don't let anybody gaslight you with this and say like, oh, don't portray people who believe in Zionism that they're some type of monsters or beast. Also, now we're supposed to feel bad and sorry for those who are killing innocent women, children, and men out there and still doing it, massacring. We're supposed to feel bad for our oppressors now. And if a lot of people is like, oh, but they're not doing anything to you, but it is kind of doing it to me, because if what they're doing in Palestine, it could be done to anybody and anywhere in the world, especially in the West. We have to start listening to Black communities, people, indigenous people, guys. It's for real. And this is for real. Okay? There's a lot of bullshit kakalaga trying to get away with things that they got away in the past. And this year, they're not. And they don't want to deal with that. They just can't. Oh. Why? Because your mommy and papi and daddy didn't pay for it in past lives or past generations. But you continue the same legacy that they left you behind, when you could have done differently. Don't make excuses for your atrocities. And don't try to say that, oh, well, because they did it to me, now I get to do it to other people. No, you're just fucking evil. And you inherit that when you could have done much better. There's people that grow up in families who are so fucked up, and they decide to break that curse, that generational, break that and say, no, it stops with me. That could have been you. But now you're blaming other people because you chose the evil way. You chose the dark world, Satan world, right? And now you're blaming other people because you're getting caught and actually stopped, because you will. Don't think for a second that because your family got away with it in the past, that you're going to do the same. You're not the same as those people who break that generation. Okay? That generational curse. Which is a lot. There's a lot of people who are not standing up for this fucking bullshit. They're realizing like, no, I'm not going to prison for this. Nah. I'm making better decisions. Acting in a different way. And you should be doing that. I'm telling you, there's a special place in hell for all of y'all who have been supporting this bullshit instead of helping us change the system. And God is going to make it very clear for all of y'all. I'm telling you.